Hello, everyone. Welcome to our study in the book of Galatians. I hope you had a great Christmas, a great COVID Christmas, and a Happy New Year. I believe things are looking up in 2021. So let's begin our first study in the book of Galatians. And I'm committed to keeping these studies under 5 minutes. And if we all did that, this would not be a burden to anyone. This would be a blessing to everyone. So let's begin. And this week we're going to just do an introduction to the book of Galatians. And Paul gives us the key right up front to understanding the whole book. He says in verse 1 that Jesus Christ was raised from the dead. And in verse 4 he says Jesus gave himself for our sins to rescue us from the present evil age. So Paul describes the cross as a rescue. He gave himself for our sins to rescue us. Now this tells us that Christianity is not mainly instruction. It's a rescue. For example, a firefighter doesn't go into a burning building to teach a class. No, he's there to rescue people. And Paul wants the Galatians and you and I to know right up front that Christianity is first and foremost a rescue. And Jesus gave himself for our sins to rescue us. Now, maybe we've been enslaved to lust, or we've been captive to alcohol and drugs, or in bondage to food. You see, this is why Jesus came to rescue us. But you know what the greatest rescue that was needed? It's from my old self. It's from me. I need to be rescued from me. We're all in bondage from birth to ourselves. And Galatians tells us this, that the cross is a rescue that crucifies my old self with Christ and raises me to new life. Jesus came to rescue us. So what Jesus did on the cross is very much like in Genesis 14. You remember this story where Lot was taken captive by the 5 kings, and Abraham went and rescued him and set him free and took him back home. Or it's like in 1 Samuel 30. Do you remember this, where the Amalekites took David's family captive, took off all his family and goods and everything? And it says David went and rescued them all and brought them all back. It says nothing was missing. David brought everything back. That's a rescue. Or when Peter, you remember that story, was sinking in the waves and Jesus pulled him out, rescued him. And so you and I were taken captive by sin and Satan and really our own selves. And we were sinking in the waves of self-love and self-idolatry and self-focus. We were drowning in all of that. And Jesus came to this earth to rescue us from ourselves. But if you think about it, Jesus' rescue really was a lot different than Abraham and David. Abraham didn't die to rescue Lot. And David didn't give himself to rescue his wife. Right? Jesus gave himself for our sins. That is, he gave his body, he gave his blood, he gave his spirit, everything, all of him, to rescue you. As Jesus hung on the cross, he rescued you from sin's penalty. He rescued you from guilt. He rescued you from condemnation. He rescued you from the grave. He rescued you from hell. And this is Paul's point, he rescued you from sin's power. You see, some people today believe that Jesus rescued you from sin's penalty. Yeah, that's what the gospel does. But to be free from sin's power, well, the gospel doesn't address that. So we made a program for that. The gospel, you see, is only to make you right with God. But if you want to stop drinking, or if you want to stop doing porn or lose weight, well, we'll help you with that. And that is a flat-out denial of the cross of Christ. And Paul wanted the Galatians to know, and you and I to know right up front, that Jesus gave himself for our sins to rescue us from the penalty and the power of it. So if you would, just look with me at the cross right now, and what you'll see is your sin hanging there. And just look how all the life is draining out of sin. The life is in the blood, and the blood is draining out. And your sin is bleeding out. And it finally gasps, it is finished. In other words, you are rescued. That's an introduction to the book of Galatians. What are your thoughts? Here's 2 questions to consider for discussion. Number 1, do you see the cross? There's 5 minutes right there. I'm almost done. Do you see the cross not merely as forgiveness and pardon from sin, but as a rescue from your old self? And question number 2, what has Jesus rescued you from? This is our study in Galatians. Push the button, share your thoughts, answer the questions, ask more questions. I look forward to hearing from you as we continue in this study together.